Hello there, how y'all doing? I gotta say, from my last video, I got some very interesting comments. Very interesting ones. Mostly asking how, like, about the dynamics between what is effectively the system, which is the old guard, which is Steve. The royal houses that actually run everything, and the DIC, which is the system's creation, and how this could possibly be a coup with Iran. And what does Tucker and this new guy Joe Kent, well, he's not new, he's been around for a while, but he's new to be inserted into this situation, how they can be involved. What's the situation with it? This was a good question. This whole Iran situation has opened up a whole can of worms. Like I said, on the one hand, you have the old guard, which is the system. You can call them the old guard, the old order, and it's a sort of old versus new world order kind of situation. Because the old guard represent the hierarchy that I showed you in the system for dummies, the 13 families and the Council of Nine. They're the old guard. This is what Trump is representing, and so are the Saudi royals. As I've said multiple times, all the royal houses in the Middle East, including the Khomeinis, although the Khomeinis are a lower branch of that same family, they're all Sassoons. They're all part of the Sassoon family. So they're all integrally tied to the 13 families at the top. And that Council of Nine, seeing as the Sassoons represent the child aspect of that trinity at the top. The deception in the industrial complex is the Gladio program. It's what it's evolved into. Yeah? If you've not heard of Operation Gladio, it started off as a means to subvert communist and fascist interests from getting a stable foothold politically within Europe by infiltrating and destroying them from within, terrorist acts blamed on them. The list goes on. Over time, it has begun to embed itself within the civil service, the militaries, the governments, even the seats of power of various nations across Europe, the Middle East and South America, and Africa as well, and also the US. It also has embedded itself within most of the boards of directors of the major corporations of the world, multinational corporations of the world. It also owns its own venture capital and investment firms. The deception industrial complex essentially is the system that the system uses to control everyone. Yeah, it's their own creation. It's headed by a specific clique within the US and UK intelligence community. This is why we were so closely aligned for a long while. This is also why a great many of the European leaders that are within the EU, and Keir Starmer, who's very Eurocentric, are also opposing Trump at the moment, because Trump represents that old guard, and the EU, which is very much aligned with the DIC, with the deception and industrial complex, is aligning itself with that. Iran is the focal point of this. Iran serves as it serves multiple purposes. One of them is the laundering of cash, the dark money, that not only the system, but also the DIC generate to fund itself. Yeah, the system can basically just wash itself of that money. It's that powerful financially. Yeah, it's just that simple. Whereas the DIC can't. Venezuela was another prime example of this, and another hub where it was funneling cash. It also has natural resources that are being utilised by the DIC's main sort of, how can I put it, its main source of power, which is China, which we'll get to in a second. Iran served that purpose as a money laundering hub, right? It also served another one, and this was manpower. Every terrorist organisation, bar none, in the Middle East is a product of the US and UK. That includes Hamas, who everyone attributes to Israel. No, we just used Israel. Rand Paul told us that during a speech he made in the United States Congress, I've shown before. But Brzezinski's also stated the same, who was one of the joint chiefs of staff for Obama. Essentially, US and UK intelligence has been instrumental in setting up all of these Islamic terror organisations, including the Muslim Brotherhood, which orchestrates itself around them all, but is subservient to Iran and the Ayatollah. The Ayatollah Khomeini was the Shia Pope, and therefore the Islamic Pope to a degree within every single nation around there. Not so much with Sunnis. Sunnis and Shias are very much diametrically opposed to each other, because Shia, I've mentioned this countless times before, but I'll do it again. Shias are very religious in a doctrinal sort of point of view. They view the religious aspect of the Quran as being fact, and everything is based around that. Yeah, everything they do, the way they run countries, the way they do everything is based around the religious dogma of the Quran, not the Hadith, which is separate. The Sunni, which is the other major sort of caliph, if you will, of Islam, is based around the Hadith, which is the teachings and sayings of Muhammad, but also his successors, right? And these are the laws that govern nations, Islamic nations, right? They are far more people talk about Sharia law, right? Now, Sharia has varying degrees of sort of varying degrees of implementation, right? Well, actually, it's more two, right? The Sunni believe that you use the Sharia as a basis, right? As a basis, a foundation for which you build all of the laws from. It's not dogmatic. It's not compulsory, yeah, in a way. It's something that you build your society around, right? and there is leeway for certain things here and there, right? This is why Wahhabism sort of stems from Sunni ideology. Shia, on the other hand, is completely dogmatic to religion, and because Sharia in the Hadith is derived from religion, they view the religious aspects as being completely dogmatic and compulsory. Yeah, think of it that way. So there is no leeway. Everything derives from the Quran, the religious teachings. And if you don't follow those and don't adhere to those, you are therefore not a Muslim as far as they're concerned. And this is why they are attacking everybody, right, across the board. Because a lot of the countries there, right, apart from Syria, who are Shia, notice how they've never been attacked, right? Everyone else is Sunni around them, right, that they've attacked because they're not Muslim enough. This is why Afghanistan and Pakistan have not been attacked, because they aren't, they're all Shia, both Shia. The Salafist, at the end of the day, Salafism as well is another one where things get divided and confused, because Salafism can both be stem from Sunni and Shia Islam, and Salafism is a lot like the closest thing we've got as a comparison is Amish, where they're very much against technology, but they're also against anything that goes against God. So that means singing, dancing, poetry, literature, anything, right, that's not part of Islamic doctrine. This makes them extremely easy to psychologically manipulate and control, and this is why 90% of the Islamic terrorists come from Shia, right? The Shia Islamic doctrine. And this is the main use of Iran and for Iran, because this very tightly sort of managed, tightly controlled and very dogmatic form of Islam is why Iran was chosen, because these madrasa, right, inside Iran were then bolstered by the West, given vast amounts of funding, and also infiltrated and manned by CIA and MI6 aligned imam who were teaching their own people this stuff. So this is basically the central military hub for the DIC is Iran. All of this immigration, all this mass immigration, all these people flooding these countries. If you notice the actual type of Islam that they actually have that dominates their nation, the vast majority is Shia, right? So they're all aligned with the Ayatollah. They're all aligned with this dogmatic sort of point of view, very immovable and sort of oppressive version of Islam. And that's what they flooded our nations with, purposefully. This was a coup. If we're looking at the two sides, which are the DIC, who have become very powerful thanks to the system that they're under, and the system, as two separate entities, Iran slowly begins to make more sense, and the reason why Israel is being denigrated by everyone else, right, really begins to make more sense.
For the draft, aren't they? Like that's the logical conclusion to the direction that we're heading in right now, unless we make some serious changes.
I mean, I've already heard rumors that Fifth Group is going to be sending guys to Iraq because of the escalated situation with Iran now.
Yeah. I mean, most Americans aren't aware of it. Our troops in Iraq and Syria have been attacked 150 plus times by Iranian proxies. And when we say Iranian proxies, we got to be clear on what that is. That's the Iraqi government that we pay. Because after the Iraqi military we spent $2 trillion on surrendered to ISIS, we had to go back in there in very short order and stand the military back up again. And guess who filled the breach? The Shia militias controlled by Iran did. And the Iraqi government's controlled by Iran. So these are...
فعالیت هسته‌ای شدیم واقعا هدفمون ساخت بمب بود دیگه ما تعارف که نداریم.
یعنی شما میگید هدف ساخت بمب بوده واقعا؟
100%.
هدف کی این بوده؟ یعنی
کل نظام یا همه اونایی که این فعالیت رو شروع کردن واقعا هدف ساخت بمب بود. حالا که شروع کرده بودیم و دیگه می‌خواستیم کار خب بیرون شما اگه میتونستیم اینو حفظش کنیم و بمب آزمایش می‌کردیم کار تموم شده بود. مثل در پاکستان ما که شروع کردیم بعد تا آخرش.
حالا اینه که شما میگید میگم چون ما تا حالا رسمی خیلی نشدیم کسی این صحبت‌ها رو کنه. اینا که شما میگید تبعاتی نداره مثلا مذاکرات و اینها با عنوان بالاخره کسی که
توجه نداره.
با خارجی بالاخره.
And you might say, Charlie, do you support or oppose this? I support President Trump. That's my answer. I know the man. He's the commander-in-chief. He's the man for the hour, and he's had the weight of the world on his shoulders. So in a situation like this, I support my friend, and he's had my back and I have his. That's my perspective. By the way, I also look at this and I say, and I understand the arguments of people that, oh, don't intervene and all that. I get it. But boy, have we not exhausted so many diplomatic channels and options. Here is Netanyahu, 261, praising and congratulating President Trump.
I actually know about Iran. Persia was a great power, and then Iran took a turn for the worst. Interestingly enough, there was the Shah of Iran, and then the Shah was displaced by Mossadegh. Mossadegh was democratically elected. Now, to be very fair, the United States and Britain got rid of Mossadegh, and then we reinstalled the Shah. Bad decision, which then led to the Iranian Revolution, where radical Islam took over Iran. Look at some of these pictures of what Iran used to be. It was wealthy, it was proud, it was strong. The Persians are wonderful people. Some of my closest friends are Persians, and I love the Persian people. And we should have a heart for the Persian people to try and have a better future. Regime change is very difficult to talk about. I actually don't like talking about regime change. It's very complicated, but understand that there can be brighter days ahead for the Iranian people. And just look at some of these pictures of how beautiful Iran used to be, how beautiful Tehran used to be. And it's very easy to kind of sit in your Western armchair and be like, oh, Israel's terrible. Well, you're able to enjoy free speech rights and a lot of rights here in the West that Iran used to have. And if you are serious about actually protecting human rights, you should want to make Iran Western.
Whilst I was editing this video, something occurred to me. Joe Kent, one of the problems with him that nobody is addressing is the fact that for 2 to 3 months he was barred from security meetings. Now, for someone as high as him, in the position that he was, which was counter-terrorism, director of counter-terrorism, to be denied access to classified security meetings is a big deal. Because he was barred. The reason why he was leaking information to outside actors. Now, no one's entirely saying who these outside actors are. I'm going to surmise that one of them was probably Tucker. Another one was Max Blumenthal, because his current wife, his new wife, writes for the Grey Zone. If you don't know who Max Blumenthal is, he's a very shifty individual. Although he's featured a lot on a great many sort of left-wing communist platforms, Jimmy Dore being one. He has ties to the IRGC. He's very pro-IRGC, very pro-Russia, very all the usual enemies of the US kind of thing. Yeah. No, that's a bad thing, right? Don't get me wrong. He's vehemently anti-Israel, which is fair enough, can be. But it's the way in which he does things. He's very, some of his reporting is spot on, yeah? But I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. Seems very, very sneaky. Anyway, so yeah, one of the sources he was leaking to was Max Blumenthal and Tucker, possibly. Now, this is a big deal because of what went on before the strikes on Iran, with Tucker being called into the president's office, right, for a private meeting. The IRGC's behaviour after, and the strikes. It would appear that Joe Kent's been doing this for a long time. He was confronted in the White House after a meeting, texting someone, very likely Tucker, was approached by two officials who basically turned around and said, you can't do that, if you do that again, you're going to be fired. So he was given a chance. He was given a chance. And he still did it anyway. There's several things in his letter that are very, very strange. He's basically painted himself as higher up the chain of command in terms of secrecy than he actually was. Yes, he was in charge of counter-terrorism. He was not, as the law seekers have said countless times, I've noticed, the head of counterintelligence. That falls under DNI. That's Tulsi. The Director of National Intelligence, yeah, or the DNI, that heads all intelligence agencies inside the US. They are the counter-terrorist, the counter-intelligence head. They are counter-intelligence director. It is not the counter-terrorism director's job. It's lower down the food chain, far lower down the food chain. So certain things that he wouldn't know, that he wouldn't be privy to, such as intelligence on nuclear weapons. Again, that's not his job. It is counter-terrorism, mostly within the US. A job he wasn't doing very well, it would appear. Obviously his mind was focused on other things. So it's domestic issues, not international issues. So the information he's providing isn't true simply for the fact that he wasn't privy to that information. Anyway, like I said, he's cut out of those meetings. So he wouldn't know the intelligence that was being fed to the president from various sources. One of them, yes, would be Mossad, yes. But he would also be seeing even the Iranians, news reports, even public statements by the Iranian regime already saying themselves, we have 60% pure uranium. They opened their negotiations, these last negotiations, saying we have enough 60% enriched uranium for 11 nuclear bombs. So when they're saying they're weeks away, they're not wrong. They can make a dirty nuclear weapon just from that 60%, yeah, that 60% enriched. It won't be particularly pure, not as explosive maybe. It depends, it's basically, what's the word? Volatile, unpredictable, I think is probably the best term. You can't keep it stable in the same way as you can when it's 90% enriched or 100% enriched. Yeah? Well, you can't get 100%, but anyway, that's beside the point. But 60% is enough for a bomb. Yeah, the fallout will be a lot worse. The radiation will be a lot worse, but the effects will be devastating enough. And this is something they could transport in a ship quite easily. People turning around and saying this is ridiculous about them being weeks away from a nuclear bomb don't understand nuclear weapons, don't understand the Iranian regime, and don't understand how nukes work or are made, to be perfectly fair. How easy they are to develop and make. People point to North Korea saying they've had nuclear weapons for ages, nuclear missiles, and don't seem to be particularly interested in firing them at anyone. It's just a deterrent. It's fair enough, yeah, but that's not the same ideology. I've talked before, in fact I talked in this video about the particular variant of Shia Islam that the IRGC is indoctrinated by. They are a death cult. It's as simple as that. They would die quite happily in the name of Islam if it furthered the cause. These are fanatics. Fanatics. Fanatics in a fundamentalist, extremist, suicidal, dogmatic, doctrinal religion. I think I've probably even understated it there, really. I have very sneaking suspicions that Joe Kent may have been part of the Gladio programme, just by his position in the White House, his former job, Special Forces work, his ties to outfits like the Grey Zone, like Tucker, who I believe, well, I'm pretty much certain is CIA, and of that clique, that particular clique. Not a very high up member of that clique, but he is part of that clique. Joe Kent is ex CIA, very high up in there, involved in counter-terrorism. He'll know the terrorists like the back of his hand. He's a very ideal candidate for being a probably the first provable Gladio asset. And that's alarming. It also shows the reality that we are indeed looking at a faction war. By two very powerful, very well organised regimes in a way. One of which was the pure creation of the other faction. It's a bit like with the Collins Elite. If you don't know what the Collins Elite are, they're Men in Black. That's who the Men in Black are. They were created after Jack Parsons opened a portal where Area 51 is today. Very theological, very theocratic Christian though, or were. They split off into two factions. One that is purely driven by the pursuit of knowledge and technology and power. So very sort of well in with the demonic aspect that they saw behind the mask. The other half turned extremely Christian. Very faith-based. Neither of those two sides are beneficial to humanity. One of them hates us because we get in the way of their pursuit of power. The other one is indifferent, and they're the best out of the bunch. And that's what we have here. We have the old guard, the old system, who are indifferent to us. And we have the DIC that I'm pretty sure hate us at this point. And they want a seat at the table. And by all appearances, the system said no. And when the DIC insisted, the system said, we're going to end you. And that's what we're seeing. Trump is most definitely old guard. Very, very much system based. And this will be fueled by his love of not necessarily England, but Scotland. He sees himself as royal in a way, because he does have that royal sort of lineage in his background. He's Scottish royals, but he's still royal at the end of the day. And the system at the top, as I mentioned before, are all European royals and Italian papal princes. Very much so. So it's only natural Trump will side with them. None, right, let's get it straight, none of these sides are beneficial to us. It's just that their objective aligns with the beneficial interest of our own. So it's a case of the enemy of my enemy is currently my friend. Which is a shitty situation to be in, especially considering the calibre of those friends that we have to side with. But they're the lesser of two evils. Once they deal with the DIC, a lot of the problems that they caused, very often in the name of the system, to be fair, will begin to dwindle and die as their command and funding structure disappears. This royalist sort of faction against DIC war idea is also bolstered by the other Arabic nations around the Middle East and around Iran that are all related, by the way, all part of the Sassoon branches, all varying sort of degrees of cousins and like first cousins, second cousins, third cousins, blah blah blah, but they're all branches of it, with the Khomeinis being the lower end branch. But they're all part of that system, and the Sassoons, as I said before, or somewhere in this video, are the child aspect of the Trinity at the top. This is why they're siding with Trump. This is why they're siding with Trump. Because it's in their better interest. If the DIC win, it alters the dynamic at the top and puts commoners up there, which isn't what they want. Do they fuck? The only reason why the Sassoons are there is because the Persian royalty-ish. Very much inclined that way. Edomite, priest class, high-end priest class. So it benefits them if they involve themselves on Trump's side rather than Khomeinis. And there's a religious aspect as well, Shia versus Sunni, that can't be ignored either. The vast majority of the regimes that run the Middle Eastern nations, the Sunni regimes that are ruling over a largely Shia population. And this is a dynamic that's worked for a long time. we kind of fucked it up when we killed Gaddafi, because that was the same situation. Sunni regime, entirely Shia population, near enough. We killed off Gaddafi, and the Shias took over, and everything went to chaos. This is what happens. Same in Iraq. The Ba'athist, yeah, Saddam Hussein's party, were all Sunni minority ruling over a Shia majority. We get rid of the Sunni, the Shia get in, destroy everything. Syria, Assad, again, Sunni regime, Shia population, although the diaspora is a bit more balanced there. But even so, now we have Al-Julani in, who is Shia, and boom, sort of minor chaos at the moment. Turkey, again, Sunni, but that's very nuanced. We will get to that in Gladio, as for why that is it's a very strange situation in Turkey. Well, this happens all the time. Iran was a major Shia. It was basically majority Shia in the regime, but the rest of them weren't even Muslim. I'd say 65-70% are either Zoroastrian or Christian or Sufi, which is another strange. It is an offshoot of Shia though, but it's religious aspects, Mr. Gossip. Anyway, beside the point. But the Shia run the show, which is why that theocratic regime, and they run off theocracy, not off policy. That's something else someone said, right? And it really annoyed me. That the Iranians have had a fatwa against nuclear weapons since, like, for decades. They proclaimed it. Yeah, they never wrote it down. Every other fatwa, right, that they've had against Salman Rushdie and everyone else, minor little players here and there, they wrote down and they made it implicit, put it into their Shia law, their Islamic law in the country. We must destroy this person, this organisation, these people. Same with Israel, same with US. Yeah. Nuclear weapons, though, we have a fatwa against them. Yeah, they said it. They didn't write it down. It wasn't real. If they're enriching, right, uranium to 60%, that's not something you do if you're using it for commercial purposes or power purposes, societal purposes. You do that because you want it weapons grade. And they were using it partly as a bargaining tool, whilst they delayed everyone until they made a bomb. This was stated by them. You can get the transcripts from the Library of Congress of the negotiations, because those negotiations are long gone and done with. So they record them for historical purposes. And you can read them yourself, which a vast majority of the anti-Israel, sort of pro-IRGC crowd don't fucking do. But they're very easily accessible, and every time they use it as a character. They declare it when they walk in. We have this much, 60% uranium, and we have enough to make X amount of bombs. What are you going to say? Oh, we'll sit here, we'll have a coffee, and then we'll leave. That's what usually happens. We paid them off, don't do it. So they're expecting a bit of cash. This time they got a bomb up the Jacksie several times. Learn about the area. Please, for God's sake, learn about the area. There's more going on in the Middle East right now that's going to affect us globally, then people will care to admit. Anyway.
Iran on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon?
No, they weren't, 3 weeks ago when this started, and they weren't in June either. I mean, the Iranians have had a religious ruling, a fatwa, against actually developing a nuclear weapon since 2004.
Okay, he's saying the Islamic Republic has a rule against using nukes. But how much do you trust the rule? Would you trust it if you found out that the rule was never written, just spoken? What if you knew that all the other fatwas were listed on the Supreme Leader's website, but not this one? And what if in 2021, Iran's intelligence minister said, of that rule, but a cornered cat may behave differently from when the cat is free? And why did 71 of their own parliament members call for changing the unwritten rule? And if the rule is ironclad, why did the Islamic Republic enrich 440 kilograms of uranium to 60% when there's no peaceful use for uranium at 60%? But let's grant that it's just a deterrent. Well, if it's a deterrent, doesn't that only work if we believe there's a chance they'll use it? If the rule is real, it's not a deterrent. If it's a deterrent, the rule isn't real. So you tell me, should we believe what they're saying or what they're doing? Look, you should have a healthy skepticism of US and Israeli politicians. But can you spare some leftovers for the guys who hanged an athlete for protesting today, killed thousands of people for protesting in a month, and have raped women in prison for years? But maybe you think, well, North Korea has a bomb and they haven't used it. They just got it to protect themselves from the US. Okay, well, is the Islamic Republic like North Korea and just trying to preserve their own life? Or are they the kind of people who arm suicide bombers because they welcome death? What if they named their streets after child suicide bombers? Does that sound like North Korea to you? Or something else? Look, it's fine to disagree with the president, but when you hear people say Iran definitely didn't want a nuke, there's definitely not an imminent threat, and we definitely shouldn't be at war, ask yourself, what makes them so sure? I have more coverage on my free newsletter at Substack. And if you just want to support the mission, you can become a paid subscriber.
Something's just occurred to me right now as I was thinking about where I'm going to place everything in this video now, because it's got a bit disjointed like it normally does. But the MENAP school, the investigation that was going on into that, what actually happened. All of these news outlets got a leak of a supposed report that was the report from the US's own investigation into that strike, what actually happened there. And I find it very interesting how that report is, that investigation is still ongoing, right? And Joe Kent is resigning now. And everyone's turning around and saying, no, it's not. I don't know why the US is saying that, because it's not a US missile. It's not a Tomahawk missile. This is how they caught him. They fed him that information to catch him out. This is why it was always denied by Trump and everyone else. They used the MENAP school investigation report, right, to catch Joe Kent out. And that's why he's retiring. Well, not retiring, that's why he resigned. And that's why he's going on Tucker and Candace and everything else, because he knows that when that report comes out, it will completely discredit him.
The U.S. engagement with Iran is not exactly playing out as the globalists expected. The cancellation of war risk insurance by the empire's oldest insurance company was supposed to bring shipping to a halt, spike oil prices, and shatter economies. Operation Epic Fury was supposed to be economically and politically disastrous for President Trump and backfire against him. But the president was ready. He moved on 3 fronts simultaneously, and Lloyd's never recovered. First, he announced that the Development Finance Corporation would step in with political risk insurance. Lloyd's had pulled coverage. Washington replaced it within days. Second, he announced the Navy was on notice to protect shipping in the Strait as needed. And third, this is the move that tells you everything about how differently this president thinks. Trump lifted some sanctions on Russian oil. Not only that, he got on the phone with President Putin to discuss the conflict in Iran. So let's put this all in context. Last week, Donald Trump branded Britain as our former closest ally, the same Great Britain which has led the charge to sanction Russia and keep the Ukraine war going, and the same country which is home to Lloyd's of London, which just tried to strangle world oil supply. So instead, Trump turns to Russia to get oil moving and chats up Putin for an hour. Now, here's something else you didn't see coming, especially if you've been imbibing the Israel runs Trump Kool-Aid. Yesterday, Axios carried this headline: Scoop. U.S. asks Israel to halt strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure. Axios reporter Barak Ravid reported 3 reasons: protecting Gulf energy stability, avoiding price spikes, and preserving Iran's oil sector for post-war cooperation. This is the same approach that President Trump used with Venezuela. Trump isn't protecting the regime. He's planning for what comes after it, and it doesn't conform to Israel's objectives. So think about what that means. Israel doesn't have a blank check. The Gulf states are being protected. Iranian oil is being preserved for the Iranian people after the regime falls. This is not a neocon war plan. This is a president managing the endgame while the bombs are still falling. Now, here's another page from the neocon playbook being put into the shredder. The page about how Trump's Iran moves are aimed at China.
We're in a very good position, but very unfair to other parts of the world, like China as an example. I mean, we're doing this for the other parts of the world, including countries like China. They get a lot of their oil through the straits. So we're doing this. We have a very good relationship with President Xi in China. I'm going there in a short period of time. And we're protecting the world from what these lunatics are trying to do, and very successfully.
So line it all up. Trump called Lloyd's bluff and called Britain our former ally. Then he eases sanctions on Russian oil and calls Putin. And he says he's doing it for China and the rest of the world. No wonder heads are exploding in think tanks in London and Washington. This is the real story, not the missile strikes or the carrier movements or the panic market headlines, but the strategic landscape being remade in real time. And this is what Promethean Action covers every day. So head on over to our website and sign up for our free newsletter. The link is in the description. Because the empire is...
So they make two sides of a very sort of disturbing coin. Neither side are a good guy. Both are pretty detrimental to the rest of the human race. It's just that at the moment, one side's objectives benefits us, and that's the destruction of the IRGC. Once they go, Islamic terrorism will subside for a very long time until they find some other way of using it again. This will have a knock-on effect, and this is another worry of mine, that the destruction of the IRGC will make the rest of the Islamic world that are in the West, by that I mean Britain, US, most of Europe, that have been infected by this sort of radicalised, fundamentalist Shia sort of element. that they will instigate a situation that I've been warning about for a very long time, and will give the Islamic world its final solution movement that was instrumental in elevating the Jewish population as it did after World War II. Jews don't rule the world. I've said this countless times. That is a psyop, a very successful psyop, and a use of a scapegoat that has been used for countless times over countless generations. They use the same ones in a kind of sort of rotation, I think. Jews, Islam, Catholics, Protestants. Jews, Islam, Catholics, Protestants. You see it over the centuries. We're not taught this kind of thing on purpose, deliberately, so we can't see it and it's being done. However, if you're a scholar of history, and you're a scholar of their history, and by that I mean Merovingian and black nobility sort of history, which is 90% of ours, to be perfectly fair, you begin to see the same patterns. The setups, the stuff that's there to maintain that narrative, the instigators that drive everyone against those scapegoats, and then the justification for eliminating those scapegoats. It's always the same. It's just some variant thereof, really. You elevate and push on one side, you demonise and inhumanise on the other. You keep that at a fairly level sort of playing field, which is what they've done since 1945 with the Jewish population. And then you start elevating one side over the other. Yeah? You always give as well, when you're trying to elevate that one side, you give them a sort of a special standing within society. Yeah? Hence anti-Semitism, why you can't talk about Jews, or couldn't, should I say, because now you can, quite freely. And it's something that the usual crowd, like people like Ian Carroll and everyone else, can't reconcile in their minds that, yes, they weren't able to talk about this previously, but now all of a sudden they can, with millions of followers hearing them, and they don't get a consequence. But they can't decide why. And the reason why they can't think why is because they're part of the DIC themselves. News organisations. Propaganda extends to our neck of the woods, our online sphere, and is even more embedded and unregulated, and quite frankly has had the wheels, the train, they've sort of, the chain's broken, yeah, online. They've been building this up for a very long time within the virtual ghettos, yeah, the social media ghettos. So places like BitChute and Odyssey and Rumble to a degree, yeah. If you're part of this sort of anti-Jewish movement, right, because that's what you are, and it is a psyop, I'll just get this out there now. You are part of a psyop. How do you explain the sudden shift in the way that you're able to speak about it? If it's so dangerous to the system, why is it all of a sudden trendy to talk about Israel that way? Garner yourself millions of views. Yeah? Whereas if you still talk about the CIA and MI6 like I do and many others, you are stunted, stymied, and effectively cordoned off to sides of the internet that no one will see. You see, when I talk about Gladio, or I talk about a particular family, I am literally shut off from everyone else. The only people that see my videos are those that have had mine shared to them, right? And even then, many are conditioned to just not take on board what I say. Through no fault of their own, but fair enough. Or, as has happened countless times, the links that are given don't work. They lead to an empty page and people think that my video's been taken down. One day I'll go over all of the evidence that I have against social media platforms, specifically YouTube, in the way that I'm quarantined and shadow banned, in the way that I can't upload to anywhere else apart from those platforms, or particular platforms in general. I'm just not allowed to upload anywhere else. I get stopped, hampered. I don't know if they're using my IP address to do that or what, but I am literally prevented from even uploading. I could fill in all the thing. Done it countless times with Rumble. And immediately my page freezes when I try and upload. So it's not Rumble's fault, don't get me wrong. It's just if they want to stop you, they'll stop you. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And the reason why they're blocking me like that on Rumble, I think, is because it uses a blockchain to store your videos. And once you're on the blockchain, it's cipher encrypted and you can't get past it. You can't prevent it after that from being put out there. You can't really put any measures on it whatsoever. It's blinding. It's alright when you can actually upload there, but I can't. I'm basically restricted to YouTube, Substack and TikTok and Twitter to a degree. I can only upload shorts, yeah, to Twitter, but Substack and again TikTok I am restricted once more. And YouTube, I don't I know for a fact. I've got so much evidence against YouTube.
Did I change my mind? It's because the Iranian people were on Twitter and on social media begging, screaming, and crying for Trump to help them so they wouldn't be mass murdered by their own government. That's the reason why I changed the opinion. That's the entire reason. You know what happened? We went in there, we nabbed Maduro, and it was nothing. We went in there and we bombed the shit out of them. We blew up their nuclear facilities like it was nothing. They had a protest, and the reason why I didn't think that we could attack them is because I didn't think it would work. But after we had a few of those things happen, and now they're at their weakest point that they're ever probably going to be, I think we finish the we finish the job, we kick them while they're down, and we stomp these fuckers out for good. They are terrorist supporters. They've always been terrorist supporters. They're not terrorist supporters. They're the terrorists themselves. Their own people are out there asking for us to help. Think about how bad it is in this country that you have bombs going off and you have videos being made of people saying thank you. How bad does your country have to be that you have people going out there saying thank you, Donald Trump, for bombing the shit out of our government? They had to go and kill all of their people and then after that turn off the internet so it wasn't obvious that there was an overwhelming, massive amount of people that are pushing for this. And I think that's the main difference. It's been an obvious difference. It's a huge difference.